This is the Dr. Katherine Albrecht Show.
Raise a signal flag on a bare hilltop. Call up an army against Babylon. Raise a signal flag on a bare hilltop. Call up an army against Babylon. Wave your hand to encourage them. Wave your hand to encourage them. As they march into the palaces of the high and mighty. I, the Lord, have dedicated these soldiers for this task. Yes, I have called mighty warriors to express my anger. Yes, I have called mighty warriors to express my anger. And they will rejoice when I am exalted.
Hello, happy Friday. It's good to be with you. Katherine Albrecht here, end of another eventful week. Boy, a lot going on in our county. I was at a meeting last night for our township trustees, talking yet again about the data center ordinance. We fought that off successfully last year. To the best of my knowledge, we don't have a particular data center trying to come into town, but wherever you live, unless you're in, Southern California or New York City, Manhattan, places where property values are incredibly high and real estate is expensive, if you live anywhere else in the country, chances are there's a data center trying to come into town, or maybe already being built, maybe bringing in its friends and neighbors and lots of other data centers in a huge compound in your area. I'm going to be talking more about that, but the meeting I sat through last night for 3 hours while we deliberated on something else, or would not wait, the trustees, before they finally got to the 2 minutes of the meeting to talk about the data center ordinance. So what's going to be happening in our township is they will be issuing a draft of the data center ordinance that would determine where these data centers can go and how they can be zoned. There have been lawsuits across the state of Michigan and all over the country for local communities who have tried to say, we don't want a data center in our community. And the federal government, the state government, the county government, I don't even know who all is fighting back, but on behalf of the big solar companies, the big data centers. And basically, if you don't know what a data center is, it is an incubator for AI. It's a cradle. It's a crib. It's a breeding ground. It's a spawning ground. I don't know what to call it. Some hideous, awful thing. I need bad music to go along with that. But it is where AI gets born. It's where AI gets fed immense, inconceivably huge quantities of electricity and immense, inconceivably huge quantities of information. Human speech, human language, writing, pictures, movies, you name it, all gets fed into there, and this all happens in the data centers. So I don't want to do the show on that, but I just wanted to mention that that's back on the radar screen yet again. I didn't think it was going to go away that easily. I had a feeling that I was going to be called back to work on that again. So just stay tuned. There's going to be more on data centers, and you may want, in your spare time, to just look around your own community. And like I said, unless you're in a community where it would not make sense to buy up 100 or 1,000 acres of property and stick something on it, there's somebody looking to stick something on your local property in your community. Okay, so earlier this week, this has been an interesting week also for the show, because on Wednesday, I encountered that horrific artificial womb technology, AWT. If you missed the show, you can go on YouTube, you can watch it, you can, hang on, let me make sure. Am I live? Yes, I am. Okay. You go on YouTube, you can watch it, you can go to Katherine-Albrecht.com, you can listen to the archives, you can go to KHNC 1360's website and listen to it there. But if you missed it, you probably should check in on that show that I did on Wednesday. The first, I think, 8 or 9 minutes of that show, we had a little technical problem. So you can skip ahead to the second section. Those of you on YouTube won't have to skip because I didn't start recording until we got there. But I was talking about the horrific reproductive technology, if you want to call it that, that has already been tested apparently for years now, since 2016, 2019. They have been experimenting with creating an artificial womb, essentially a big plastic bag filled with fake amniotic fluid, where a fetus of a piglet or a sheep, which were the pictures that I had posted, where they can be hooked up to tubes and pumps and essentially kept alive while they grow and gestate not in a womb of their mom, but in a plastic bag. And the awful part about that, of course, it just kept getting worse and worse as we read about it, because not only do they want to do this to save premature babies, as though they really cared about babies at 21 weeks of age. That's the cutoff where they said, oh, we need this because babies before then won't survive. So we have to develop this technology. It's ethically necessary, even though they routinely are perfectly comfortable ending the lives of babies before that age, intentionally through abortion. But that's just neither here nor there. I'm not going to talk about that. That's not my topic today. The disturbing part was an article, let's see, it's out of Stanford University, Yale University, and then some researchers in Japan. This is all over the world. It's also in the Netherlands. They're doing this as well. It's all over the world. I'm not singling those places out because they're the only places doing it. Those are just the places of the articles that I was reading. The technology that they're developing, I would say probably in the US, it seems to me from what I'm reading, Stanford is kind of the primary culprit. If you're not familiar with Stanford, it's considered to be a West Coast Ivy. Most of the Ivy League schools, the Harvard and the Yale and the Princeton and all of those are in New England, on the East Coast, in the sort of upper Northeast, if you're in another country, the upper Northeast of the country, up by Massachusetts and that area. The West Coast, which is California, way over here, has Stanford, which is considered to be equivalent in prestige to the Ivy Leagues, or at least it's part of that class of schools. And at Stanford University, the Ivy League of the West in California, it's right there, pretty much Silicon Valley, right around there. That is where the bioethicists and the neonatologists who are so concerned about babies and their survival are developing some of the most horrific things that I can even imagine. And so I dove a little deeper into this after the show on Wednesday. And the question, and I guess I raised this question during Wednesday's show, in the 1970s, 1976, when the very first test tube baby, and that's in quotes because there was no test tube involved, it was a petri dish actually, where they took some fluid and they took an egg cell that had been extracted from her mother and added some sperm cells, and the fertilization took place in glass outside of a mother's body, outside of a womb. So that was the first time that had ever been done. That was 1976, Louise Brown in England. And so I remember, because I was alive then, I remember the hullabaloo, the circus, the whole media frenzy around that test tube baby, and around the idea that a baby could be born outside of the normal processes that God has created for human reproduction. And I, was thinking this through, really hit on one question, and this is a question I remember hearing from back then. There was concern when it was first discovered that Louise Brown's mother was pregnant with her through this unique and different way of doing things. There was concern on the part of churches, but also just regular people. I think pretty much everybody who heard about this thought, this can't possibly work. There's going to be something really wrong with this. So she wrote a book. Hang on, I think I just grabbed it. Let me grab it. Hang on. She wrote a book called, is it not here? Thought I had it. Here it is. Yeah, it's right here on my screen. Okay. I'm going to see if during this break, I can actually show you this picture in YouTube. So if you're not on YouTube and you're able to hop over there, look for Katherine Albrecht Radio, because I have my little chat window open, but I also have the ability, I think, to put images up there into the YouTube stream as well. So I'm going to try to do that. So there's a picture of Louise Brown. She was born in the 1970s, so she's in her, I guess she would be in her 40s now. She looks like a perfectly normal, kind of middle-aged, slightly plump, friendly-looking British woman. Her official autobiography is called My Life as the World's First Test Tube Baby. Now, back in 1976, this was referred to as a test tube baby. Nowadays, this is the same technology we refer to today as IVF, in vitro fertilization. And the word vitro means glass. That's where if you speak Spanish, it's vidrio. It means glass. So in vitro means fertilization that takes place in glass, whether that's a petri dish or a test tube. All right, well, I want to talk about what happened to her and her family when she was born. And I'm going to talk about how now we can fast forward 45 years or so, 40 years and 50 years, almost 50 years, yeah, and how much things have changed. I'll be right back.
Why are most email programs free? Companies use them as bait to lure people into their system so they can scan their data and sell them to advertisers. It's like a hotel giving out free rooms so they can film people sleeping and then sell the video. You'd never agree to that. StartMail restores your privacy. No one but you sees your sensitive data, and it costs less than a postage stamp a week. StartMail.com. It's email you can trust. Your email is your business, but if it's spied on, hacked, or intercepted, it can fall into the wrong hands. The solution is encryption, a high-tech way to scramble your data so no one can read it. For years, only the technical elite could use this powerful tool until StartMail came along. StartMail not only lets you encrypt the email you send, it encrypts your entire account. Encryption. It's just one more way StartMail.com keeps you safe.
Hi, this is Joe Jaquin, owner of the Patriot Trading Group. I'm sure you're probably
Israel, the one who formed you says, don't be afraid. Oh, Israel, the one who formed you says, don't be afraid. For I've ransomed you, I've called you by name. You are mine, you are mine. Oh, Israel, the one who formed you says, don't be afraid. Oh, Israel, the one who formed you says, don't be afraid. For I've ransomed you, I've called you by name. You are mine, I will praise you, oh Lord. I will praise you, oh Lord. You were angry with me, but not anymore. Now you comfort me. I will praise you, oh Lord. I will praise you, oh Lord. You were angry with me, but not anymore. Now you comfort me. See, God has come to save me. I will trust in Him and not be afraid. Lord God is my strength and my song. He has given me victory, and with joy I will drink
See if I can do this.
Deeply from the fountain of salvation.
All right, I'm doing my level best here. Hang on, if it works. Image. Okay. Didn't happen super fast. If you are listening on the radio, what I'm doing is I am trying to bring up a copy of the cover of Louise Brown's autobiography. She is the first test tube baby. So let's see if I'm able to pull it off. Let's see. Create new. And now I browse, and I just grabbed it. And why is it not there? That's okay. Here it is. Okay. Is it going to work? All right. Can you guys see that? If you can, that's good. This is me learning on the fly how to use my, hang on. There we go. Learning how to use my YouTube streaming. It's a little weird. It's kind of weird, but there she is. So that's Louise Brown. Somebody text me in my chat window if you can see that in my YouTube chat window. She's kind of moving around, but I think I got it. That is Louise Brown. I can't figure out how to get it all the way. And somebody messaged me. Yes, we can see it. Yes. All right, perfect. So this is my first foray into trying on the fly to put content up here for YouTube to see. So I'll get better at that, but that kind of worked. All right, my life is the first test tube baby. What she tells in this story, and yesterday's show, I was admitting that I got called out for not having read a book in a long time. And I said, but I've read so many books. I download books from Anna's archive, and I have all these PDFs and all these EPUBs, and I read them. And but the question was, have you read any cover to cover? So I did my level best to try to read Louise Brown's My Life is the First Test Tube Baby cover to cover. I got about halfway through, and then I just ran out of time. But I really did read it. I didn't skim it. I actually sat down and I read it. Now, in this case, I read it in a PDF on a screen. Had I had it as a book, I think it would have been a little bit more actual reading. But if you missed my show yesterday on reading and the importance of reading and the things we have lost by clicking around and having hyperlinks and such, you can listen to yesterday's show for an update on that. But anyway, so with that background, I got this book and I actually read it. And it's a fascinating book. So her, and let me just tell you the table of contents. Normal baby, mom and dad story, world reaction, under siege in Hassel Drive, poems, headlines, TV shows, world tours, so movie plans, blah, blah, blah. So basically they were inundated with media attention when this happened. And the reason they were inundated with media attention is because nobody thought that it would be possible. And everybody was waiting for the other shoe to drop and this to be a disaster. So her poor parents, when she was born, they put her through so many tests over and over and over. Tests for normalcy, tests for heart function, tests for lung function, kidney function, blood tests, IQ tests, speech tests. I mean, they just put her through so much because no one could believe back in 1976 that it would be possible for a baby who was born in this way, in vitro through glass, to actually be normal. And yet she turned out to be perfectly normal. Now, the reason this came up for me and the reason I was researching it is because when I was thinking about those awful, awful plastic amniotic sacs and the Brave New World idea that we're just going to bring babies into the world and put them in sacs and gestate them outside of their mother's womb in laboratories in yucky artificial plastic chemical fluid, yuck. The question that I was asking my own self is, how much longer is God going to continue to put human souls into the humans that humanity is bringing into existence through these dark technologies? And I was just pondering that. I was just thinking, it's really disrespectful of God that we are creating we're not creating anything. We're using the building blocks that he put together for life, and yet we're modifying them and doing bad things to them. And yet he continues to put an actual soul, a spirit, a being, an entity, a real person, an eternal being into each one of these bodies that we're creating. And that's what I was thinking about, because I know when Louise Brown, when her mom was pregnant, I remember as a kid hearing people say, she's not going to have a soul. We're going to create an army of cyborgs. These are going to be zombies. These aren't going to be real people because God's not going to put a soul into them. And sure enough, he did. Louise Brown is every bit as much of a person as you or I. And the intervening 50 years, get this, I've done some research. 1 out of 50 babies now in America is born through in vitro fertilization. So it went from being this is the hugest news ever. I mean, they had photographers surrounding their house. Louise Brown's mom had to stay in the hospital and could not even leave her hospital room for months because there were actual reporters posing as other patients coming in with medical conditions, being hospitalized so they could get a glimpse of her and manage to take paparazzi photos of her. They had to put dark curtains in the window. When they finally got home, she couldn't go out of the house. This was a big deal. And it was journalists from all over the world flying out there. They flew her to Japan. They flew her to both of the parents and the baby. They flew them. They put them on the Phil Donahue show. They flew them to Canada. Just all these different trips everywhere. I mean, they were the biggest celebrities you could ever imagine. And in fact, one of the doctors who developed this procedure was such a celebrity and so just so admired that he won the Nobel Prize for this feat of managing to take a human egg cell out of a woman's body and combine it with a sperm cell in a petri dish in vitro in glass and create a little, I think it's that blastocyst, the little tiny, it divides in 2, then it divides in 4, then it divides in 8, and then implant that at around that stage back into the woman. Now, what I have found since then, of course, she does have a soul. And let me tell you just one more thing on that. There was, like the Weekly World News, one of those awful tabloids from back in the 70s, if you lived through it. At every supermarket check stand, there would be a ridiculous newspaper that would have supposed news, but it wasn't news. It was like, Elvis has a 2-headed goat baby with an alien, that kind of thing, or just weird stuff. And it was all false or ridiculous. And you knew anything you read in there wasn't true. But it was kind of like it looked like news, but it wasn't news. And that publication actually printed, Louise Brown cites it in her book. She reprints it in its entirety. And it talks about it basically says the baby is not normal, and paranormal researchers are it's all hush hush and secrecy, but they're all looking at her because she's not normal. And this is right around when The Exorcist came out. So they say one of the examples is the mom is coming into the room with a stack of diapers, and all of a sudden the diapers just fly out of her hand through this invisible force, and she looks over at the baby who is sitting up in her crib and staring at her mother with this evil look on her face. And she can read minds, she can levitate her toys and move them around the room. So all ridiculous and not true, but the reason those kinds of stories were out there, and it wasn't just that Weekly World News, that weird, ridiculous thing, but other people were publishing stupid things as well, that because people were expecting this to not work, because there was an inherent discomfort with changing the regular way things are done. Like, people really talked a lot about, is this going to anger God? Is he going to end the human race over this? What is going to happen? And what we have now at this point, we've got 1 in 50 babies being born through this procedure. So that's a lot. That's a lot of babies. That is. Now, here is the thing that I ran across today that was so disturbing to me. I got a bunch of headlines here. Let me find them. If human, click on the similar color. Have you guys seen that? I like it. It's better than a CAPTCHA. If human, click on the similar color. I did. Yeah. All right. This is a headline here. How many fetuses are killed annually by in vitro fertilization? In vitro fertilization is carried out 2.5 million times annually worldwide. That's since Louise Brown was the first. But only 500,000 babies are actually born from the procedure each year, according to research published in an article or in a publication called Reproductive Biomedicine. Official statistics show that almost half of the embryos used to help a woman conceive through IVF were thrown away during or after the process. The vast reserve of frozen embryos in the U.S. is estimated to be 1.6 million, and that is an unintended consequence of IVF. So here's what we've done since in the 50 years since Louise Brown, 49 years, I guess. Here's what we've done is we have taken something that was absolutely scandalous. The Catholic Church came out against it. The Methodist Church came out against it. Pretty much anybody came out against it and said this is the wrong thing to do. It's now become such a yawn passe thing that nobody even bats an eyelash at it these days. Sorry for mixing that metaphor. But anyway, nobody thinks twice about it. It's just an accepted thing. Except now there is new research out that shows that more unborn babies are killed because of IVF than because of abortion. All right, I'll give you those statistics when we come back. So if we care about unborn life in the womb, then we need to pay attention to this and what Louise Brown, her birth has brought into existence in our world. All right, I'm Katherine Albrecht. Stay tuned.
Is your email box overrun with spam? With a StartMail account, you'll never have to give your real email address to a stranger again. Online shopping, newsletter subscriptions, getting that 30% off coupon, they all need your email address. But with StartMail, you can invent new addresses or aliases linked to your inbox behind the scenes and give those out to people while keeping your real address hidden. It's just one more protection from StartMail.com.
Red alert, Yahoo users. You've fallen in a trap that could ruin your life if you keep using Yahoo.
You consent to sharing all data in your email account with our AI providers, and you grant us a perpetual license to use, display, publish, and publicly distribute your content in any media known now or in the future, and to let other users access and distribute it as well.
Yikes! It's time to switch to StartMail, the only email that's AI-free and private by design. StartMail.com. Use promo code JD.
Look at the birds. Look at the birds. I tell you not to worry about everyday life. I tell you not to worry about everyday life. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? Look at the birds. Look at the birds. Look at the birds. Look at the birds. And if God cares so wonderfully for wildflowers, He will certainly care for you. And if God cares so wonderfully for wildflowers, He will certainly care for you. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those those who live in a land of deep darkness alive.
We need it because the land is deeply dark. But the good news is God's on the throne. Yeah. Okay. Let me do you remember I told you guys a while back that when I prepare a show in advance, sometimes it's not my best show? Well, that's what I've done here. I have so much to say, and when I prepare it in advance, I somehow don't manage to get it all out. I don't know why that is. I do much better on the fly, just saying I know exactly what I want to say, click, 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 and then I have it, and then I tell it. So I'm going to try to go through this quickly because I may be over-prepared, and I want to make sure I get to everything. So the in vitro fertilization, which was the way Louise Brown was brought into the world in the 1970s and caused so much scandal, is the process of extracting an egg from a woman. Now, back in those days, they didn't have the drugs that they give women in order to get them to produce more than one egg. So every month, a woman has an egg that actually women are born with all of their eggs in as they come out as infants themselves. They already have the little immature eggs in there. But every month an egg ripens, and one single egg ripens, and then it travels down the fallopian tube and it goes into the womb where it awaits a sperm cell. And if it encounters a sperm cell, then that becomes the developing infant. It multiplies fairly rapidly, and within 9 months a baby's born. The issue with Louise Brown's mom is that her fallopian tubes were blocked. So she had several surgeries. And of course, this is back in the 1970s where I'm sure the surgeries were not as fine-tuned as they are now. And rather than solve the problem, they actually scarred her fallopian tubes further to the point where there was no hope at all for her to have a baby. And her parents they had not gone to college. I don't even know that they'd graduated high school. Her parents were, I believe, taken advantage of by a doctor who wanted to prove himself. They went in for just some help to figure out how to have a baby. And he said, I've got a solution. But he didn't tell them that this was untested, that they'd never done it before, that it could result in huge problems for the baby. He didn't tell them any of this. And he just got him to sign up. They signed some papers, and about 4 or 5 months later, as she was actually pregnant, they extracted the egg. They did but they didn't really tell them that it was groundbreaking or a new thing. And then that doctor, in order to make a name for himself, released that information to the press, and then, I guess the phrase is all hell broke loose. But the media circus began, and they were just the center of attention for the whole planet. The process of extracting an egg that doctor did back in the 1970s was just to go into, guide a needle and aspirate an egg out, the egg that was the fertile egg that was traveling down the fallopian tube. Nowadays, what they do in vitro fertilization is they give the woman drugs, and the drugs are designed to stimulate the follicles to produce more than one egg. And in fact, the follicles will produce multiple eggs, sometimes dozens of eggs. I don't know about dozens, but a lot. And when when she goes in for the cycle, they see if they've got the eggs, they extract them, and then they combine them with the sperm cells. Now, what has been happening, or what they found out quickly as I think it was Louise Brown and then another woman, and then he opened an actual official clinic, and then it became commercialized, and then lots of people were doing it within just a couple of years after that. What they discovered is that when you do it that way, nature has a way of survival of the fittest. So if you've got a million sperm and you just grab one of them at random, there's a decent chance that one is not going to be the strongest one. It's not going to be the one that would have won the race. The chances that you have congenital defects, that you have birth defects with the babies born from this, are actually higher than the babies who are born just using normal reproduction, because there's a survival of the fittest. There's kind of a competition for who's going to survive. So the way they get around that is they actually, instead of fertilizing one egg, like they did with Louise Brown, that just happened to work out, is they fertilize many, many eggs. And when you have 15, 16, 18 eggs, you don't want to put all 18 of those back into the woman, but you also don't want to just pick one of them and put it in her either, because the one may not make it. maybe that one egg has a little congenital defect. Maybe the sperm that fertilized that one wasn't as strong of a sperm as the one who fertilized the other ones. So what they do is they fertilize multiple eggs, and then they implant multiple little, I need the word blastocysts, zygotes. I have it here in my notes, but you know what I'm talking about. They put these multiple ones into the woman's womb and then wait to see which one takes. Now, some of them won't take it all. They won't survive. Other ones will. So remember Octomom? If you guys remember, Nadia Suleiman, I think was her name. Is her name. She's still out there in LA being kind of weird. She is the woman, they call her Octomom because she had 8 babies. And why did she have 8 babies? Because she had gone in for in vitro fertilization as a single woman. And they had implanted 8 embryos in her womb. And when it came time to cull them to remove what they euphemistically call the excess biological tissue, cough, cough, which was really her children, the babies, they said, we need to get this down. Maybe you could have triplets, maybe you could have twins, but in the best case scenario, you just have one kid. So let's get rid of the other babies. Well, that's the process that happens for all of these women, is you have to actually abort babies. You have to actually take fetuses that are growing, embryos, whatever. Again, there's all these names for it, but you know what I'm talking about. You have to take living human tiny babies and you have to remove them and kill them, because otherwise you'll be Octomom and have 8 babies. And her babies were born with all kinds of problems because you can't gestate 8 babies. We're not mice. We're not cats. Even cats, I don't think, have 8 babies, but we were certainly never meant to do that. The ethical considerations here are immense. And in all the articles I've been reading about today, that's the number one problem that they have, is in order to do this correctly, it is necessary to create multiple human babies. So, and then once you've created the multiple human babies, you have the ones that are in the womb that have to be culled or destroyed or aborted. And then you have the leftover ones that didn't go into the womb because you took out enough eggs just to be on the safe side. And so there are an estimated 1.2 million human babies in tiny, tiny form in deep freezes all over the United States. So that is a problem. Now, once the woman becomes pregnant, has her baby, the big dilemma is, what do you do with the other eggs? So you've got the dilemma of you have to actually do an abortion inside her womb to kill the other babies. But then you've also got this issue of, what about the frozen ones that are left over? The summary of this is, you can either have them destroyed, the lab will destroy them for you, and I think that just means taking them out of the deep freeze and throwing them away. You can donate them to another family. So maybe there's a family where the mother doesn't produce any eggs or the father doesn't produce any sperm. In that case, you can take your fertilized children, your baby children, your tiny children, and you can give them to another couple that is struggling to have children. And then you wipe your hands of it. You never hear about it again, but then they can go on and bring your biological child to term and raise that child as their own baby. So it's kind of a form of adoption, I suppose. The other option, and this is the option that 40% of people take, and this is the one that sickens me, is you can donate those embryos for research purposes. This is donating your children to be experimented on. Now, I'm going to read you, because of course this would be happening at Stanford. I'm really sickened by Stanford right now because of their reproductive technology, yucky stuff. So Stanford has something called the Renew Biobank, located at the Center for Human Embryonic Stem Cell Research and Education in the Stem Cell Biology and Regenerative Medicine Institute at Stanford. And here's their pitch. Reasons for patients to donate. So you've gone through this IVF, you have already killed the babies in your womb that were excess, and now you've got a bunch of frozen babies. What are you going to do with them? Each IVF cycle generates, listen to this, these guys make me ill. Each IVF cycle generates a small excess of unusable biological materials. Okay, there are no biological materials. There are babies. That's all there is. And to call them unusable biological materials when those are your, I mean, if you brought those babies to term, those are your children. They're going to have their father's eyes. They're going to have their mother's artistic ability. They're going to have, their grandma's height. They're going to have, these are children. These are not unusable biological materials. They're children. You have the opportunity to donate these discarded IVF materials for research at Stanford. Research on in vitro fertilization and the human embryo prior to implantation is necessary if we are to understand human development and treat a wide range of human disorders, including infertility. Advances in human embryonic stem cell research may someday lead to new treatments for adult diseases such as diabetes, Parkinson's, spinal cord injuries, and Alzheimer's. Okay, now, what do they do with these? Well, first of all, what are they looking for? What are the tissues? What are the discarded biological materials that they want? Well, embryos, zygotes, cleavage stage embryos on day 3, and euploid blastocysts and oocytes. All right, all but the last one. The last one's eggs. But they're looking for babies. That's what they want. And what do they do with them? It's horrifying. When they get to the point where they're putting babies into those plastic wombs, these are the babies they're going to put in there. It's going to be these discarded babies that people donate.
I've been hearing a lot about the LifeWave patches, and they sound amazing.
I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. I knew you. I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Before you were born, I set you apart. I set you apart. Don't be afraid of the people, for I will be with you. Don't be afraid of the people, for I will protect you. I have put my words in your mouth. I have put my words in your mouth. Look, what do you see? I see a branch from an almond tree. Good eyes, I'm sticking with you. I'll make every word I give you come true.
3-6.
Today for the mountains may move and the hills disappear.
Okay, so let me read you some statistics. The practice of IVF results in approximately 200, this number, I can't believe this number, 270 million human lives destroyed every year because of IVF. Here are the numbers. It depends on 1.7 million human embryos thrown away, This one here, 2009. Let me see if I can find the article I really want. 270 million. It has been estimated there are more than 220 million natural embryo deaths worldwide each year. Hang on. Oh, where's my article? And by the way, there's an article here in the Washington Post, why many IVF patients worry about the anti-abortion movement. Well, why do they worry about that? Because if you are opposed to abortion and you want to do IVF, you have a little bit of a problem, because IVF, if people haven't thought deeply about it, seems like it's all about life. It is a process that just brings life into the world. Now abortion's all about ending a life. That's the definition of it. So it seems on the surface, if you have not thought deeply, if you haven't looked at these statistics, if you haven't really processed what's going on here, then it would be, on the one hand, life, choose life. It's all life. We're going to have IVF and there's going to be a great, a bouncing, happy, healthy baby born on the other side of it, which is the opposite of abortion. The truth, though, is that in the case of an abortion, it is one baby, but in the case of IVF, it can be many, many babies. Now, there's a second part, and I'm not going to get to all the stuff I wanted to talk about this hour, but this should at least get you started, and I'll post some links so you can look at them on your own. But I have queued up a YouTube video. This is from NBC News. That there's yet another problem. There's yet another wrinkle in here, and it's not surprising. The clinics who perform this IVF thing that they do, they are increasingly being uncovered as not caring about life at all. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because they are having to literally throw away these human babies. They're having to throw them away. So the very nature of the work that they're doing, the very nature of the sort of playing God and, who lives, who dies, we're just going to abort a whole bunch of, we're going to put 8 in there, we're going to kill 7 of them. It's all about the money. That's what it becomes about. And so unbeknownst to anyone, there are hundreds, thousands of lawsuits that or of tragic situations where the IVF clinic did something really bad. And these don't usually make it into the news because they usually get settled out of court. They don't even make it to court. But I'm going to play this clip from NBC News, which is about a tragic situation that happened to one family who decided not to settle out of court because they actually want to bring attention to their story. And this has to do with the unethical practices of these IVF clinics. So, Jack, why don't we go ahead and cue it up? Here we go.
When Marissa Calhoun and Stephen Castaneda started talking about having children, they knew it wouldn't be an easy road. Marissa has stage 4 endometriosis, a painful condition that can make getting pregnant incredibly difficult.
And I've had about 4 surgeries since my diagnosis, and as a result of that have spent a lot of time being told by doctors that I may never get the chance to become a mom.
Marissa knew she'd likely have to turn to IVF to conceive, so she went through multiple painful rounds of egg freezing.
Every time I would have a retrieval, it would sort of send my endometriosis into a flare and make me pretty sick.
In 2023, the couple decided to make embryos and were ecstatic to hear they'd created 16. But with one call from the doctor, everything changed.
He basically said the words that immediately let me know something was wrong. I've never had to make a call like the call I'm making right now.
Marissa says the doctor told her because of a labeling error, all of her embryos had been discarded.
How do you just throw away the chance for human life? Just toss it like it's the trash.
So in less than a week, you went from thinking, we're having discussions about how many children do we want to have, to every single embryo is just in the trash.
Yeah.
Marissa and Stephen's story is one of several recent examples of IVF gone awry. Last year, a Georgia woman gave up her 5-month-old baby after a DNA test revealed she'd given birth to someone else's biological son. Both she and the other family had used the same South Carolina fertility clinic for IVF.
It's like the happiest day of their life. It's like the worst day of mine.
Nightmare scenarios like these are thought to be rare, but an NBC News analysis found that in the last 5 years, more than 300 lawsuits have been filed over similar claims, where fertility clinics or related companies allegedly lost, destroyed, or even swapped patients' embryos, eggs, or sperm. The vast majority involved some form of product failure, like when a storage tank that keeps eggs and embryos frozen malfunctions. But more than a quarter of the lawsuits stemmed from alleged mistakes, miscommunications, and other types of human error, including Marissa's.
I feel like I've been robbed not just of our embryos, and not just of my time, not just of tens of thousands of dollars that I spent in that process, but I feel robbed of my choices.
Roughly 1 in 50 babies born in the U.S. today were conceived via IVF, but the federal government only tracks clinics' pregnancy success rates, not their mishaps. Experts say that is a problem.
IVF is the medicine of miracles. The problem is we just don't know how often things go well compared with how frequently mistakes happen.
Dov Fox runs the University of San Diego's Center for Health Law Policy and Bioethics.
So in other areas of healthcare, most states strictly require hospitals to monitor and report what they call never events. These are avoidable and serious errors that just shouldn't happen. Things like mismatched blood transfusions and surgery on the wrong patient or body part. We don't see this in assisted reproduction.
That means lawsuits and news stories are often the only way mistakes like these come to light.
We've represented more than 1,000 people against their fertility clinics. The vast majority of those the public doesn't know about because we settled them before we needed to file the lawsuit.
And ultimately, Marissa and Stephen say that is why they decided to come forward and file a lawsuit against their clinic.
If enough of us speak out, there will be more regulation. There will be more protocol put into place. That's my only hope.
The clinic declined to comment on an active case, but denied the allegations in a court filing. The American Society for Reproductive Medicine, a professional association that recommends best practices for the fertility industry, says IVF is regulated essentially the same way as all medicine in the U.S., and that lawsuits are an important component. As for the couple, they're starting over from scratch at a different clinic.
Is that hard for y'all to trust the system again when you know, regulation-wise, nothing has changed to prevent it from happening again?
It's extremely hard. I do think that the industry at large has gotten away from human care and patient care, and it has become big business. That level of carelessness is the only way that I could wrap my mind around someone taking the potential for human life and just throwing it away.
Thanks for watching.
I'm going to jump in. So it's bad enough to throw it away. What about turning it over to the ghouls at Stanford for experimentation? The dilemma that this creates, and there are a number of articles saying, you know, the dirty little secret of IVF and the biggest problem we face is not the technology, it's the ethical issue that we face with parents when we have to actually tell them, you have worked so hard to get a child. In many cases, you are vehemently pro-life, and now we've got this problem in that you're going to have to make some decisions about what are you going to do with the babies that you've created? What are you going to do with the potential children that you have created? You can either donate them to someone else to raise, you can have us throw them in the garbage can, or you could donate them to Stanford. And of course, Stanford's right there saying, yes, give them to us. That's unwanted, useless tissue that you don't need, that's just left over. So give it to us and we'll use it to save lives. But they're not going to save lives with it. They're going to destroy lives. And these are human lives that they're taking and experimenting on. These are the lives that are going to wind up in the bags. These are the lives that are going to have their brains and their nervous system stripped out of them to feel no pain so they can become the bodyoids and be cut apart for parts for organ transplantation, and have drug trials done on them, human experimentation, instead of animal experimentation, we'll just use them because nobody wants them anyway. They're being thrown away. So yeah, there's more to this than meets the eye, and they're not telling it to you. It all seems like life, go, it's so good, I'm gonna have a baby. But yeah, it's so much worse. And the number of babies that die to this are greater than the number who die from abortion. So I'll post that link as well. Yeah, it's important. All right, see you Monday. Have the best weekend you can.